who keeps track of it? For example, in real marathon, like where not the virtual one, and where you actually participate amongst other competitors, other marathon runners. There are people to make sure that like you're actually doing that
You
whole
didn't
trail.
cheat.
Yeah, that you didn't
Yeah.
cheat. Guess who's back again? It's Adonis Choundalas, my friend, my mentor, who just ran a virtual marathon. So that's a thing now, virtual marathon, because of COVID-19, that you cannot really have a lot of people together outside for health and safety reasons. But that didn't stop the marathon runners who participated in the Athens Marathon of 2020, which took place on the 8th of November. So here we have Adonis Choundalas, who's going to share his experience on this run. So Adonis, how was the virtual run? And just to make sure that people understand that you are not sitting on your couch playing a video game, like where it's a virtual marathon. Like you actually went out there and ran. So the reason why you call it a virtual marathon is because you told me you're tracked by an app or something. We want to hear everything about it.
Okay, that's a good point that you made there to clarify this way of participating in this event because on my interview on the radio that I gave right after the event, the interviewer had that impression that like how did you exactly do that? So virtual means that you log on those miles, but you do it by yourself. So we were talking before the interview, trying to find the analogy, and one good analogy is like you go to, and maybe that can be confusing as well. That you go to a soccer game or to a hockey game, and as a spectator, right? So you're watching this event amongst some thousands of other spectators. So there's this energy that it's transmitted, from every person that it's in there. So when everybody's, like, okay, is there a penalty or not? You see the reaction and the reaction of the others. It influences your reaction as well. So when they react to a goal, of course, you react in a similar way, just because you're amongst other people. When you're in your living room, you tend to do the same, have the same reactions, but it's not exactly. And people that have, like been in sporting events, they know the difference. So this is pretty much the difference of running a marathon organized, amongst other runners, or running a marathon by yourself, just solo.
So who keeps track of it? For example, in real marathon, like where not the virtual one, and where you actually participate amongst other competitors, other marathon runners. There are people to make sure that like you're actually doing that
You
whole
didn't
trail.
cheat.
Yeah, that you didn't
Yeah,
cheat.
you didn't
Like,
cheat.
obviously, I'm trying to find a like more
Yeah, yeah.
a better
So
way of saying it. So who is keeping tabs on you? Who is keeping you accountable in this case, since it's virtual?
you see, so Big Brother is there for us, and making things, more easier in nowadays, and especially with the COVID, we use a lot all this technology, GPS and videos, and the list goes on. So the GPS technology has been applied in running in the past years, and this technology has helped all these major events, like boom, in a way of, for the organizers, it's so much easier, to have more participants, and track them down accurately, and how much distance they cover in what time, and if there's any cheating and all that. In this particular event and in all these virtual events, yes, you do use the GPS technology, but the satellite doesn't know if you took your bike or you did it on foot, or if you were driving with your car, wandering, and enjoying the scenery around and all that. So I'm assuming that the people were tempted to record the times that they were faster than their ability. We always see it, even in events, in official events, that there's some attempts, from people, to somehow, cheat, and especially what I've seen and has been recorded is that people to qualify, for example, to qualify in the Boston Marathon, they have used the performance of somebody else, giving their name and all the other information. But for example, you want to qualify Boston Marathon, but you don't have the capacity to run that 42.2 kilometers in X time. So you ask me, Adoni, okay, register as Rik Bhattacharja and run the distances. So because you have the capacity, and this way you qualify me. So that has happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you record your time here with this race, the virtual race, and if you're honest enough, this is what you transmit, and that's what I did. I don't know how honest other people were, but that's how you do it, and this is recorded. It's not official, of course. So if there's any record broken, of course you're not going to register that as record, just because of this ability, to cheat, right?
What about, let's say, Boston this year?
Cancelled. It was initially was postponed for September, and then it was postponed again for next September. First time that happened in history, and I want to underline this. Boston Marathon was the only sporting event in modern era that was held consecutively for over 120 years.
Wow.
Year in, year out, throughout Spanish flus, throughout World War One, throughout World War Two, throughout anything that happened in this earth in those 120 years, it was Boston Marathon. It started in 1897, the year after the initiation of the modern Olympics in Athens. That was in 1896, and they chose a route that would replicate the marathon to Athens distance route. So that was from Hopkinton outside Boston all the way to Boston. So you had the uphills and downhills and all those, like elements that you usually have in the Athens Marathon as well. So since then, it was uninterrupted until COVID-19 appeared, and there was no race, neither virtual race for that matter. The particular race to me, and this is why I participated, is because it's not any race. It's the authentic race. So it means that this is where all marathons start, and this is what marathons around the world measure up to. And in this, time and era, what best, to do it virtually. So now I'm not there, and I don't experience the same, elements, be it, temperature, be it, the scenery, be it, the uphills, downhills, and all that. But in heart is what triggered me, to participate. So I had in mind what the Athenians did some 2,500 years ago, and what lessons do we draw from that effort today and apply them in the current situation. So that's what pushed me, to participate And I wasn't prepared either. But what happened? Because most people know the story of Philippides. It was the road runner that would. He was the messenger. So he was a messenger of the Athenian army that would go, and not only go up to other city states and transmit different messages to other city states. And in fact, it was the same guy that went from Athens to Sparta to ask them for support, and that was some 241, 46 kilometers, and that's another race, the Spartathlon, and I'm going to open a parenthesis here. The Spartathlon is again some race for few people. You need to have some serious qualifications to participate in this race, and we have some major ultra runners that have participated in this race, trying to break the record that Yanni Kouros, the ultimate ultra marathoner of all times, even if you look back to Philippides, has recorded for that distance. Yannis Kouros is, people know Muhammad Ali, or people know Diego Maradona that died a few days ago, because of the exposure of the sport. Because it's a popular sport, everybody knew Maradona. Uh, Running, and especially ultra marathoning, it's not a popular sport. But if you knew the mental and the physical capacities of this man, look him up. Yannis Kouros with a Y and the Kouros. Kouros as the statue that we see, the Kouros, that's the same name. And so all the other ultramarathoners, from Scott Jurek to Kilian Jornet to Dean Karnazes. Dean Karnazes has been considered as one of the 100 most influential people from Time magazine. He's an ultramarathoner as well with a Greek origin, and he's done that race not to break Yanni Kouros' record, because he knew that he can't do that. He can run far, he can run for long, but he cannot run at that speed for that long. He will run in that area again an ultra marathon to commemorate the 200 years from the Greek independence that is being celebrated next year, 2021.
Wow.
So Dean Karnazes will give a different, if you want, input to these celebrations, from the running community, right? So it's a huge community, running community that, of course, most people that are preoccupied with soccer or, hockey, and the basketball and other sports don't, really know what's happening in this world. But by closing the parenthesis, I'm coming back to the Athenians that we know that Philippides ran from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory of the Athenians against the Persians. So he said that one word, "nenikikamen," which means we won. And the sporting company that makes some all kinds of products and some mega money, Nike, is that word, Nikisame, Nike, right? So he died right there, Philippides. Why he died? Because of the conditions, because of the effort, because of dehydration, because of the distance, because of what happened before he got there. Because the Athenians and the Plataeans were fighting the Persians for 3 hours, and that was the length of the battle there in the morning. So defeated the Persians, went back, and they boarded on their ships, and they didn't board on their ships to go back to what's known today as Iran, but they boarded on the ships to go by sea to Athens. The Athenians now realized that the Persians now are going by sea to Athens. So Athens now is all there's no protection whatsoever. There's nobody to protect their city. So they had no choice but to lift all their artillery, 35 kilos of weight, all their equipment, and to run back to Athens to protect the city from the Persians that they took the road by sea down to Athens. So they left the plateaus there to take care of all the anything that was left in the battlefield, and it took them approximately 7 to 7.5 hours by historian Herodotus. If I'm not mistaken, it was or Thucydides. So one of those two, I think it was Thucydides. Now that I'm thinking, so it took him 7.5 hours to do not 42.2 kilometers, but more than that, because they went to Rafina, which is the suburb, the seafront suburb of Athens, that they knew that that's where the Persians would go to invade Athens. So as soon as they got there, and this is the story now, the direction of the sun was setting, so they turned their shields against the sun into a degree that the sunlight from would reflect to their shields and bounce to the Persian ships. So they did that. The whole army united, as a one body, and they twisted their shields. I'm saying this and I get the goosebumps. And they twisted their shields, in a direction, that the light would bounce to the Persian ships. And when the Persians saw that, they said, "Okay, these people are wackos, that's it, there's no hope. Let's go back there." For them, to fight us for 3 hours and be here before us on foot with all this artillery, and show us that, hey, come to me. They said that, okay, So these are now the capacities that these people had, right? Mental and physical. And you wonder, why did they do that? And the obvious thing is to protect their belongings, their land, their people, their values, right? And today, we need to tap into this capacity of ours in order to protect as well values of ours, to protect our health. That today we have all these issues, be it COVID, be it any cancer, or any other diseases, heart diseases, and all that. We need, to make that effort to find the courage, the inner power to perform in tasks that life gives us, that otherwise would think, as unattainable, something that the unthinkable. You can't do that. And obviously these people had some training, no doubt about that, but they didn't train, Rik, to go and fight, for so many hours and then pull a full marathon, perhaps some 50 kilometers right after, and be ready to fight again, right? So you think that you can do so much, but if you believe in something, you can, surpass yourself. This is the meaning, and this is the lesson that I drew from this. So I entered into the race not fully prepared, obviously. I did not do any marathon training whatsoever. But I had my foundation. So that means that I would run, a few days per week, some decent mileage, nothing extraordinary, some long runs of 28 kilometers, some long runs of 25 kilometers, some, but not the way that I should have prepared myself to participate in a marathon. Yet, I knew that with this, as a marathon running coach as well, right? I knew that it was sufficient to attempt this. And of course, knowing that every time you get into a running session, you come out of it knowing more about yourself. This is something that I always tell to everyone, and I've been telling you with our running sessions. You never come out from a running session the same way. And when you participate in team sports, it's different because you're more distracted by your teammates, by your opponents, by the strategy of the game, by your coach, by the fans, by so many factors. When you run, it's a solitude event that, as I have said to you, it's yoga on the go. So it allows you, as you know, yoga is uniting and becoming, like simplifying, becoming one with yourself, with your inner being, and with nature. And that's what running does. It gives you that you have to approach this process in the yogic way. If you don't, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to complete any challenge, anything challenging at least, be it 500 meters or be it 5 kilometers or be it 50 kilometers. You need to immerse and you need to get that inner power to zone out and see who's the boss in your situation. Is it your mind? Is it your body? Or is it your soul? And at the beginning, the body is all, peppy and proud that here I am, and look at my form and look at my pace and look, how effortless this is, and I compare this to our life journey as well. But follow me. So as the mileage logs in, then the mind starts to intervene, and it starts questioning. Okay, like, hey, buddy, like, aren't you, taking me too fast, or is this what you can do? Can't you do more? And so then you have the body and the mind, not exactly conflict, but in many occasions it can be a big time all-out war between the mind and the body. And then at some point the body starts to say, okay, I can't do this, this is not easy. And then the mind starts to come into the support of the body and says, hey, yeah, you're right, why don't you stop here and have a beer, look at this bar here that that's all, with all this terrace, and everything. Oh, you smell the pizza down from down the street. There's this pizza place, and oh, and what do I want to prove, by running this, by this effort, I don't need to prove anything to myself or to any other. Just, give it up. You made a nice effort. You did, something that many people on a Sunday morning, wouldn't do. Maybe they would bike for half an hour or an hour or something, and then they would go back to their regular life. Maybe some people would kayak, like play some tennis or something. But this is not normal. So what are you doing here? So the mind is actually a major obstacle at some point. And this is where now the soul is coming in front and tries to deal with these guys that's called the mind and body, and tell them, you shush guys, you do as I say. There's more for you to give, you know. And this is what these people did, and this is what you find uh, that you haven't used, this soul inner power that you need to know that you have it in order to apply this power in any situation, life situation that occurs to you. So this is the lesson that you needed to remind to yourself. And marathoners of any capacity know this very well. Be it from Kipchoge that runs, like almost in sub 2 hours the race, to those end of the pack 70 years old or even 40 years old runners that run their first marathon and they accomplish that athlos, as we say in Greek, because athlos at the end of the day means from the athletes. It means that you did something that it's larger than you. It's something that till then you could not accomplish. So that's where the word athletics and athlos came.
Going back to the whole imagery that you showed, where these Greek soldiers with all their equipments, they ran home to protect what belongs to them, their values, and they didn't train for this. It's very mental. It's because they really wanted to do that. They really needed to do what they needed to accomplish. Now, you told me, I think in the last in the last interview, that the last 10, 15 kilometers is the hardest. No matter how seasoned professional you are, like that's where the mental game begins, the mental battle against your wish to just rest and stop. Now, I am imagining that in non-virtual marathons, there are people around you. There is this energy that kind of encourages you to push forward. Like the other people are doing it too.
So
How
many,
how
so
was
many
it?
images.
I know. Now this one, there's nobody.
Yeah,
Your community isn't here.
not exactly. Yeah.
I mean, virtually yes, but so how did it feel? I want more details about the last 10, 15 kilometers where the real game begins, where you really are the soul has to take over. You have to have this reason why you're doing this. Especially this one, compared to other marathons, the reason that you have to come up with to finish it, what your soul tells you in other marathons versus this one.
uh, Multiple marathon races came into my mind when you were, talking about those last miles, and from one end to the other. For example, in Boston, when I was both dehydrated and sunstroke and suffering from hypothermia, I was approaching Boston, and on Patriots Day, the year after the Boston bombings, where everyone came out to show resilience into this terrorist attack, you had like more than 2 million people along the path cheering for everyone that was participating in this race. And I was trying to look normal and tell them that Yeah, I'm an athlete, don't see me like like this, dragging my carcass, to the finish line. I'm better than what you see, trying to crack a smile or keep some of your posture, straight, or lift your feet. None of that, or keep your arms up, and you would see, all these crowds around you and say, oh, how am I not going to embarrass myself here? And how can I tell them that, no, this is not me. I'm better than this, And then you had other races like when I did my record in Ottawa, that at some point at the Rideau Canal, you go through some narrow path that the people around you that at closer than 1 meter. Uh, Now, COVID, no COVID at that time, but you could feel, you could sense, their energy, and they were yelling in your ear, and push you literally, like throwing their arms into the path, to push you ahead, and next one and next one and next one, and you had nothing to do but allow yourself into this, energy, and this would take you, to the next step, to the next incredible experiences, So from one end to the other end of the spectrum that comes into my mind. In this virtual attempt, obviously you didn't have this, and au contraire, uh, you had to deal with all these people that had no idea what you were attempting, and it was a not well thought out choice of a route, in the sense that my last 10, 12 kilometers were in the traffic. So I had to deal with traffic lights, intersections, sidewalks, up and down the sidewalks where your feet don't go that high, at some point, and using minimalistic shoes for the first time for a marathon as well. I had to deal with that challenge, and then you had the people riding on the side bicycles on the sidewalk because it was not safe for them either, to be on the street. And you had to keep your distance, of course, because now you're huffing and puffing, and you don't want to freak someone out, that because your breath can go, like spread like 3-4 meters away, you don't want to freak that person out. So that you have to give some space, but you see the guy with the bicycle that he's not going to take his bicycle on the road. That you if you go on the road, yes, you're going against the traffic. Is it safe? And if the sidewalk is like a foot high, you need to jump down that on tired legs and then climb that back up. So you're making all these calculations, in the last 10, 12 kilometers, as opposed of immersing and zone out and find that inner power to push yourself forward, right? So it was totally challenging. It was totally challenging. Running and have the cars bypassing you by 60, 80 kilometers of speed, you feel that not only you're not moving, but you're going backwards because of the optics, it gives you that sense. So everything was in those 10, 12 kilometers, not everything, but I mean, those factors were factors enough, to make it all that challenging. The good thing is that I had nice weather. So the weather was optimal for running, and I'm thankful for that. And it was a replica of the elements that you would have in Athens on the same day, November the 8th. So I had my 18 degrees or something like that on a sunny day. It was amazing. And as I said, the first 30 kilometers was what a pleasure, scenic, and some people, honking, cheering for you, and all the cyclists, cheering for you. But that was until, the last stretch. Yeah.
How did you feel in your, I'm not going to say finish line, but okay, let's call it finish, the virtual finish line. How did you feel when you finally finished that 42.2 kilometers? What emotions did you feel?
Uh, there were so many times that my mind said, okay, you have any reason, to give it up. You have to stop at the traffic lights. You have to, to watch out for cyclists, for pedestrians, for people, on those carts, Oh, no, like you can come out with any excuse that it's very, like credible that you could not finish the race. So when I finished, I said, I can't believe I did it. It was like it seemed like I did it for the first time. Obviously, there's all kinds of hormones that there have come out, to assist you in this effort. You have all these oxytocins and serotons and all those hormones that they're out there. They're called the endorphins. We seek for them in other situations from any kind of substitutes, be it some weed or be it some heavy duty narcotics, right? Although you have them in you, so these they come into your rescue, and at the end of the race, you're in some kind of a nirvana, trying, of course, to deal now with all the pain and the exhaustion of that time, of that moment. Yeah, yeah. So not it's a special moment always. I think every marathoner can remember every finish line. Even if they have run like 20, 50 marathons, they can remember all the finish lines.
What's
Yeah.
beautiful is that despite COVID-19, the running community pays homage to the history of marathon by running the Athens Marathon, although they cannot do it physically, but they're there in spirit, and now with technology that's feasible.
And draw the lessons and pass on all these meanings and all these messages to the broader community. This is why I'm here. It might be long, this conversation, but for people that have the time, to sit down and listen to what I'm saying, by no means I'm trying to portray here that I'm some kind of a super athlete. The contrary, I'm trying to tell to everyone that we can accomplish things that we think that they're impossible. And this is the lesson that we got from these people 2005 years ago. And this is what the running community is trying, to apply. And this is the message that I'm trying, to pass on to you and to people that see us and listen to us.
And these lessons we can apply it in so many places. And speaking of that whole mental block, I'm actually having the same, not obviously not at the same level as you are, like, the last 10, 15 kilometers you have to really push through. But I've seen it in weightlifting for some reason, where if I tell my mind, oh, it's really heavy, I don't think I can, guess what? My body does exactly what I thought it would do. And when I just let it go without even thinking much, I lift it, then I can. But of course, there are days where the inner voice is stronger than what I can actually do. So this is something that I'd like to experience one day. That last 10, 15 kilometers that you were talking about, I wish to experience it one day.
Everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rik. Everyone has experienced this essence because it's about essence. And I'll explain it to you. You said about, the weightlifting, and it applies to every effort of ours. Take, for example, somebody that plays golf, that he aims for that hole that's some, I don't know how many hundred of feet, yards away, and he takes that shot and the ball goes, as close as possible to that hole, or maybe even into the hole on one, as we say. Take that person that shoots, the hoop, for in basketball, and takes that shot, that you would, you wonder how that did this happen. Uh, Take the penalty shot that some soccer player will take, and or the goalie, why the goalie saved it, or why the penalty shot was in, or and it happens in. I'm talking about sports, but that happens even in life experiences. So this essence, the difference with running a marathon or long distance is that you have to multiply it, and so you sense it for longer time, or you have to feel in that zone for longer in order to finish that effort.
We're approaching the New Year's. 2020, it's ending. 2020 was very challenging for all of us. COVID-19, the isolation, a lot of us, I'm going to be honest, where we were not physically active. We kind of vegetated inside. Now, COVID-19 is still out there. The reality of isolation is still very real. We are in our second lockdown in Quebec. So for the upcoming year, 2021, if you have to say one thing to our viewers, what would be your message?
Embrace nature. Go out there and be as active as you can uh, all year round. Daytime, nighttime, find the courage, schedule some time, and make those baby steps if you're not in shape, or if you're not accustomed to this routine, be it because it's too cold for you, or it's raining, or it's night, or you're too tired. Find that energy, those resources of yours, to slowly change your routine, and do those basic things. First of all, to energize yourself, and then once you get into this new routine, then we come to the coaching uh, level, that how you make the best out of this routine, instead of repeating the same thing as we have said. The muscles have memory, so if you go walking out there again and again and again, the muscles are minimizing the output. They conserve energy. So yes, one major thing for the people that don't go out there is go out. Now that the gyms are closed, realize that we have all kinds of other options out there, and explore them. So that's one. The other thing is, do it properly. Dress well, be safe, and being safe meaning that not to slide, when it's slippery, when it's night, to be visible, or even during the day, to dress properly, not to underdress, not to overdress, and wear the right gear, when it comes to shoes, and all these details. And then be safe in the sense that you don't do an extremity to injure yourself, to have a heart attack, or again, be safe, not to find that fine line, between getting the most that you can from this activity without getting injured, or put yourself into some risk. Go out there and be as active as you can. Embrace nature.